parental love. Celebrating Father's Day is our topic today. Happy Father's Day to those that are here this morning and to those that are watching us from above, who are guiding us, who are connected to us even when we don't feel their loving presence. In considering today's topics, I will ask for your forgiveness if I break down and cry, because I think of my own father, who is not physically here. And of course, if you feel the need to shed a tear when you think of your father, or when you think of your children's father, whether they may be physically here or in the spirit realm, feel free to let those tears roll free on your face. So today we're going to be celebrating not only Father's Day, but Parental Day, because often we know that there are many mothers, there are many grandfathers, uncles, stepfathers, friends, neighbors, who sometimes step in to fulfill the position of the fatherly figure. That one person that makes a very defining difference in our lives. And so we would like to dedicate this study to all of you, father figures, mothers, and everyone else that may be fulfilling and making a difference in any little boys or little girls' lives, or even an adult one, when we look for guidance. When we talk about parental love, we thought it was important to begin by addressing a very well-known law to all of us that govern the universe, whether we are in a planet of trials and expiations, such as the one we find ourselves in, or more evolved ones. And of course, we're talking about the law of love. And so we begin with this very well-known phrase here: you should love the Lord your God with your heart. And so from here we start establishing the connection between child and father, creature and creator, with all your soul and with all your mind. That is the greatest and first commandment. And here is the second, which is similar to that one: you should love your neighbor as yourself. Considering the fact that it is in the home that we will start trying to apply this great commandment, we started thinking about the aspect of loving one neighbor as oneself. So I'm going to ask you guys a question that was asked last weekend while we were at a seminar. Who here loves their neighbors? All of them?
We try.
Here's a deeper question, and I asked my husband the question: do you love Jesus or God more? It's a tough question to ask, right? The reason why I'm asking this is because oftentimes we live our lives thinking that God is so distant, so far out, and often our connection with Jesus is greater because we figure that He's closer to us, right? But the truth of it all is that when we start considering the fact that if we study this loving our Lord with all our heart, with all our soul, and all of our mind, and we bring it closer to the family, we are going to find that oftentimes to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, we have to draw out strength from a source that is divine, that is all love, that is pure. And this is why we started our study today with this reflection right here. Because after all, when we talk about parental love, it isn't always that a father or a mother will have a child that is full bliss. True? There are those that are trying, that are difficult. But the truth is that there are no ex-children and no ex-parents. You can't divorce your father, and you can't divorce your son. There are ex-wives, there are ex-husbands. We can even say that we don't want to know about our parents anymore, or our parents can simply abandon us, but there are no ex-children or ex-parents. It is a bond, an important one. And the development of this tie is important for both spirits, as we're going to find here through our study. So the commitment at home with this teaching is even greater when we receive a child to guide and to educate. So the question is there a greater responsibility for a mother or a father than to receive a spirit to guide? Because it's hard enough to guide ourselves, right? To educate ourselves. And when we have the responsibility of a soul that comes before us, in a little bundle of joy. We don't want to kill them at that moment. We just want to hug them, protect them, encourage them, guide them, offer them support and strength. And we find that parents in the beginning phases of a child's life is filled with that magical feeling where that's exactly what they want to do. Searching for specific examples in the internet to bring to you today in the form of a video or a story, I decided not to. Because there are so many beautiful examples of love stories between a child and their parents, whether they were adopted or not, whether they were embraced by a heart who was kind enough to love someone else's child, whether they were a biological one. We find countless stories of children finally understanding their parents. Parents loving their child so much, sacrifices, deep sacrifices are made. We found stories of forgiveness, of how a child was able to look past behind a lot of the suffering caused by a single parent, whether it was the mother or the father, and be able to look at them with the appreciation and compassion that one of the things that they gave them that no one else could was life. Life. And so today we are going to start focusing about this. According to the Spiritist teaching, often cited in the Spirit's book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, and other amazing books that support the Spiritist teaching, we find that first and foremost, the parent's responsibility is in educating a child. We see here, as it is, the spirits of the parents have a mission to develop their children through education. It is a task for them. If they fail to perform it, they will be held accountable. This is in the Spirit's book, an answer on question 208. But it goes further than that, because it's much more than guiding them. It's more than educating. It's a mission that has been entrusted from God onto the parents. Can parenthood be considered a mission? Yes, it is without a doubt a mission, and at the same time, a very great duty that involves parents more than they might think concerning their responsibility for the future. And the benevolent spirits continue. God has placed children under the care of their parents so that they may guide them on the path of the good, and has facilitated their task by giving a children a frail and delicate organization that renders them accessible to all sorts of impressions. Now, this is really important for us to consider, and it is without a doubt, all of us know, a serious commitment that a parent has before them, because from a Spiritist perspective, we see that before us we're talking about being co-creators, not only in partaking in the making of a child, which is a beautiful act, but in also co-creating an environment for the child where, through the impressions that it receives, we are guiding them towards becoming an adult, a human being, a spirit who will go out into society and make a difference. And of course, I'm not a parent, so I don't have any moral authority to stand before anybody here, because I can't possibly understand how tough it is to have a child in your hand and know of this great responsibility and mission, and what it takes to guide a child into society, becoming a good person, as we find in the Gospel according to Spiritism. So we find that before us we have a father and a mother who accepted the difficult task and beautiful mission of receiving an immortal spirit and molding them, educating them, guiding them, offering them all of the conditions that will be positive as they develop into an adult. Some people, aside from the Spiritist perspective, believe that often births are caused by chance. There is no planning. There is no possible way that this troubled child could be mine. They have nothing to do with our family. Or a child might say that about their own parents. I feel a complete stranger among my family. But there is a lot of planning and a lot of investments made. Because when it comes to God's child, He doesn't play around. He's talking about His creatures. So I'm going to give you an example. In 1901, a Scottish man migrated to the United States, came from Scotland, through Ellis Island. He arrived here, and in 1921, decided to choose New York as his home. In 1945, this Scotsman decided to adopt a baby, an American. So he did, a newborn. The ties and kinship between the mother and the baby was instant. And some will say, how can it be when the mother didn't have those 9 months to prepare and bond with that child? How can it be an instant connection between adoptive mother and her child or father? Here I go. See, I told you I was going to cry. But then, this American man, adopted by a Scottish father, decided to travel the world and ended up in Brazil. Choosing São Paulo as a home base, he was told of a little girl who was in need of a home. She was 5, so he adopted her. Scotland, United States, Brazil, 3 different souls, reconnecting, finding each other, because that's what organizing, the divine planning does. It offers opportunities for the souls while they are going through their own personal journey to find one another, to connect. I was talking about me, by the way. I was the little girl. How can a little girl who's 5 years old look at a man who doesn't speak her language and find instant connection, as I did with my grandfather? He wasn't fluent in Portuguese, I wasn't fluent in English, but we were both fluent in the language of love that united us, the ties that connected us from previous existences. So for those who believe that when a child is born into a family or adopted into a family and it's a by chance encounter, they're completely mistaken. Because God would never simply give up one of His children into the world without the necessary conditions, the kind of environment that the child will be born into socially, economically, the kind of body that they would use for their advancement, whether it's a sick body or a healthy one, the kind of parents that they would be exposed to, where both parent and child are connected for their betterment, both of them. I will ask here, how many parents in the room? Raise your hands. Have you learned from your child?
Yes.
Can somebody, what have you learned from your child, Ricardo?
Well, he provided me the way to teach him.
The way to teach him?
Yeah. To guide him.
Good.
And he has been very responsible. And that's a lesson for me.
John, as a father, what have you learned from your children?
Listen more, talk less.
Listen more, talk less. Any single mothers in the room? What have you learned from your child as you play both roles, father and mother?
All you need is love. I know that sounds very cliche, but whatever you do, you make mistakes, but as long as love is behind what your actions are, then that's all you really need.
It's not cliche, because in reality, when we talk about this reconnection of souls in the family home, talking about parental love, parental guidance, celebrating Father's Day, we're talking about the fact that we are all governed by the law of love and justice. And this is something that it does not fail. It is the same for all of us. So a child, a mother, a father, husband's wife, at the appropriate time, the family circle starts to come together. And we're not just talking about biological family circles here. We're talking about beings that are reunited for one reason or another. I know of friends here that have had a very hard time. And I will talk for myself until I learn about the Spiritist teachings. Why? Why was I given up for adoption? Why? Because God above knew about the circumstances, what I needed at that time to evolve, to develop the faculties of my soul. And at the appropriate time, somebody who was assigned to me would come along to offer me all of the blessings that we have come to receive. But then I started to think about the biological parents and how much they are deserving of recognition. I was talking to a friend of mine who does not live in Miami, so nobody's going to look at anybody here. But she was talking to me about what a hard time she had through her whole childhood because she suffered from the fact that her father had abandoned her family. How could he do this to us? And even with the Spirit's vision, that abandonment feeling, valid, real, painful, left such a scar in her soul that she was unable to very much relate with other people. And so she was instructed to look for her father and look him in the eye and have the conversation no one wants to have. And she did. And what she realized was that he was an alcoholic. And he looked at her through an apology. He said, you know, I have loved you all my life, but I haven't loved myself enough to take care of me. How could I ever take care of you? But he gave her life. And at that moment of connecting and looking into his eyes and realizing his truth, she decided to forgive. When I was looking at stories of forgiveness between a child and a parent, I found one that was remarkable. It was a columnist, and he was talking about his own process of forgiving his parents for the mistakes. And when he had his child, and the child was in the crib, sleeping peacefully, he thought to himself, if I don't forgive my father, I will never become the father my son deserves. Through a healing process, we little by little start understanding the need to be charitable and forgiving. And so we find that we all come together at the appropriate time, even when forgiveness are requested of us, to carry out and continue on a plan that was established before, to follow one another into this new incarnation wherein we are reunited in the same family or in the same circle, working together for the mutual advancement. And here we don't necessarily only talk about parental love or fathers and mothers. We're talking about every kind of relationships that call upon us to be either in the same family or the same circle. So children are definitely a part of this planning. No by chance. Even if our pregnancy was an accident, that's what we think, it was an accident, it wasn't. It was planned. And we participated wholeheartedly in that planning process as well. Even further, we are taught in the Spiritist teachings that the parents don't necessarily create the spirit of their children. This is important that we know, and also educates us a little further regarding the materialist point of view that a child is created at the moment of conception. The spirit already exists, pre-existed that body information. They do nothing except furnish them with their corporeal envelope, but it is their duty to aid in their intellectual and moral development in order to help them progress. Because we know that as much as we reincarnate to progress, the spirits that have been entrusted onto us also are here to progress. And so we have a mission to assist them and encourage them and guide them towards that progress as well. So that's a commitment that we have made previously. Emmanuel will state that eventually parents will understand little by little the sacredness of having chosen the maternal or paternal mission, understanding the sublime invitation to assist the spirits who reincarnate among them, offering them the necessary tools to evolve. And so the reason we celebrate Father's Day is to applaud the great father figures out there, mother figures out there, godparents, stepfathers, neighbors and friends. Because in reality, that's what they're doing. Protecting them in the starting phases of their lives. Offering them the guidance that they need in order for them to develop these potentialities of the spirits. One of the things that we find is that children will learn by the process of imitation. Imitating their parents. We see little girls trying to walk in their mother's high heels, and little boys trying to put on their father's shoes, trying to shave, trying to do everything that the father does. And then the mothers look at the fathers and they fall in love all over again because they see this whole side of the men they never knew existed, or mothers who were there. And so it's important that we talk about this because a lot of great fathers understand that it is during the childhood that the spirit is more accessible to the impressions that it's going to receive. It is during that time, and it is up to them to assist them in their progress. So persons in charge of its education should contribute towards the school. It's interesting. I don't know if this ever happened here as parents. You say a bad word, and then automatically the child repeats. This has happened to me once. I lived with a friend. I lived with her for the first 3 years of her daughter's life. And I remember that she was coming down the stairs, and I kicked my little toe on my foot. And everybody knows here, the first thing you do is curse, because it hurts a lot. And automatically, with the cutest little voice, she repeated the word I said. And I was like, oh my goodness. Because they're looking, they're observing. Scientific research has shown that children start imitating their parents from the moment that they start observing the world around them. And that's not when they start walking. It's when they're in the crib. In the crib. And so when a lot of parents feel that they come unprepared to have children, fathers sometimes take longer to adjust to that idea because they're not with a child right here, right? It happens. And they don't know if they're going to be good or not. They say that they are prepared. And most of all, the Gospel according to Spiritism will state, if you want to know which role to take in educating your child, pay attention to them, because from the crib they start demonstrating their personality, where it needs to be educated, if we pay close attention. But the greatest thing of it all is that a lot of time people will pay a lot of attention on the motherhood. If anybody here has read Missionaries of the Light, they will see the beautiful moment in which a mother is given as in the format of a baby, the spirit who will reincarnate. So it's a book that is worth reading. The whole reincarnatory planning is explained by Andreia in the book. But fathers are also prepared. The book, oh my goodness. The messengers state that there is a department in the spirit world dedicated to preparing the fathers for fatherhood. How many of you knew that? Isn't that amazing? So here, I'm going to send you out into the world. And Fatima and David are going to find each other through the course of life. They're going to go through everything that they need to before they get together and become husband and wife. Learning, acquiring experiences, developing their sentiments, their feelings, their virtues, working on their vices. But then, they decide that eventually they're going to start a family. And Fatima, she's ready for it. But David's like, I don't know, man. This is kind of, I'm scared. But he doesn't remember that he received coaching and counseling in the spirit world. That God would never, ever make up a situation for someone else to fail. We're destined to succeed, to greatness. And we are offered all of these tools to encourage us and support us and give us guidance. Here is what they say. There are fatherhood preparation centers. Large numbers of brothers examine images of their uncompleted tasks and tearfully remember their past of indifference towards their duty as fathers. So this is really beautiful because we see here that there is a planning and there's also a prepping in its highest degree, especially when a soul recognizes its mistake in the area of fatherhood or motherhood and in wish to have that experience yet again. So when we talk about reincarnation and souls getting reconnected, sometimes as a father, as a son again, it is to make amends, to, fulfill the little holes that were left, the little gaps, things that allowed for this harmony to get in. And so they're prepped to come back again and to be able to receive that child. And so they find that not only here, one of the things that God does is offer us divine guidance. When the immediate family or members of come together to assist, when there are fears, when there are mistakes, there will always be someone there to offer us the support that we need. And when we talk about this here, a lot of people will say, it is a good thing that the messengers bring this here, because if we consider many of the relationships that have gone ill or astray in the parent-child relationship, we're going to find a lot of parents who lacked. And a lot of people might have a hard time celebrating Father's Day today. Why am I going to celebrate Father's Day today? My father was abusive. My father was an alcoholic. My father was not present. My father was unfaithful. My father this, my father that. But the Gospel according to Spiritism will tell us that it is not up to the child to judge, but for God to judge. And not just that. When we start learning about Spiritism, and we start learning about the aspect of forgiveness, and having a vision of being able to look at Sandra as an immortal spirit, a universe within herself. I don't know her history, I don't know her past. I don't know what had her come to the point of where she abandoned someone or a child. The truth of the matter, as stated by Dr. Andreia, a transpersonal psychologist and homeopathic doctor, everything that we have heard about our parents, if they have made a mistake, is not true. They're hearsay, stories. We haven't lived in their feet, in their shoes, to know what they endured or what they went through. And so it's important that we have this vision of the immortal spirit and start trying to apply and live in accordance with the gospel. The Gospel according to Spiritism talks about charity. Charity in its widest form is what? Benevolence, indulgence, forgiveness. And so St. Augustine will say, if charity establishes a law, repaying evil with good, being indulgent toward the imperfections of others, not speaking ill of one's neighbor, forgetting and forgiving wrongs, and even loving one's enemies, how much more do these obligations apply regarding our own parents who gave our lives? Things start changing. And we're not talking about immediate forgiveness, but the path of forgiveness, of seeing them. It took me a long time to accept the fact that my father was allowed to make mistakes. As a matter of fact, I only came to understand that in my mid-20s. Because that's what we do in our maturity. We demand. We demand. And it's valid. It's valid. But nothing happened to me that wasn't allowed to. That wasn't supposed to. That wouldn't strengthen me. That wouldn't give me the strength that I needed to be able to face the world. And most of all, everything that I received gave me an opportunity to be able to look at my father with compassion. And that's what I did. And it's a beautiful moment when there's that connectivity and we're able to look into a parent's eyes and say, hey, you are allowed to make mistakes. Because I know that there are fathers and mothers sitting in this room right here who often question daily if they're doing the right thing, if they're loving enough, if they're present enough. And they have no idea how their children look at them. I sat before a kindergarten graduation class. I was so proud. It was my godson, Jake, Susanna's son. And he stood there proud, receiving his diploma. And then came the 5th graders graduating, and they were all proud, confident kids. Where did they get that? They get that from the encouragement of their parents. I applaud parents like Susanna and Sherry, like Carla and Enrique, whose son stood before a camera and talked about spiritism and life and death and heaven and hell. And we see parents doing their very best because that's what it takes. That's what it takes, effort, a little bit of effort. God never demanded perfection when dealing with one another, and that includes parenthood. Parenthood with love. Love present as we try to educate our parents, our children. So, we find here that more than anything else, we have to applaud the parents, the fathers, those that are present, those that through the difficulties of trying to deal with themselves, with their fragilities, with their weaknesses, are trying their best to educate a child. What if I don't have a child? What if I don't have a child? We're invited to be parents in humanity. Parents in humanity. We decided to bring an example here of a man that we have come to know who has adopted 685 children. Through the course of his life, he's 89. 89 today. He's not married. And then he assists 3,000 children daily in education and nourishment and health care. So the story of Givaldo kind of allows us to see that God, in His infinite mercy, is so great, that those of us that feel that we have been orphaned or left behind, or that there is no one else that we can look up to, that is a father figure in humanity, there are individuals who make a difference. So we are not able to bear children. That's okay. Are we able to make a difference in a child's life? Yes, we are, through examples. So we are not able to adopt a child. Do we need to have that child right beside us to act as a role model and guide? We don't. We can be at the Spiritual Center in the youth education and make a difference. We can go to an orphanage. There are rooms in hospital, the intensive care units where newborns have to be held. And when we see a person like this who goes out of himself and opens his heart to embrace, to adopt 685 children, giving his name, we find that society is filled with human beings like that, because they are extensions of God on earth. There are no orphans on earth. No one has been abandoned. We have to now start thinking about people like this who encourage us to find in each other the link, the connecting link to the greatest Father of all, which is our Father above. And I jokingly say that I wasn't adopted once in this life, but twice. I was adopted when my biological father had me, because he had to ask permission for God, my father, my big father, to be able to bring me into the world. And then my father, Donald, who adopted me when I was 5. And in reality, we are all adopted. None of us are orphaned. Because Father truly, with capital F, is above, watching all of us. Emmanuel will state that God has been waiting for us to simply give of ourselves to Him. He's given Himself completely to us. We are heirs of the universe. But in order to be able to get a hold of that treasure, we have to reach spiritual maturity. We have to grow up. We have to be able to know how to use it. Do we know how to use all of the richness that is in store for us as children of God, heirs to the universe, to the greatness before us? There is a story that I like to share with you as we start finishing our study this morning, to show how God's grace works and how He utilizes certain human beings on earth to be extensions of His fatherly love on earth. There was a woman in the 1950s who got pregnant by her fiancé. Now in the 50s, in Brazil, at a small town, it was bad to be pregnant in the 50s without being married. But she loved her fiancé, and he loved her a lot. So when he found out about the death of his best friend and her situation, because they talked, he approached her with a lot of respect and decided to tell her about his feelings that were hidden for so long. And obviously in shock, she listened because he had something else to say. He said, "Listen, I know of your delicate situation, and I will volunteer myself to marry you, to take care of you and your child, and eventually wait to see if you'll also open up your heart to me." She was so desperate that she considered the invitation, the proposition, the proposal, and she accepted. A few months later, she had the baby. They developed into a beautiful kinship, love, gratitude, the presence of the Father, always there, supporting her, guiding her, giving her the strength. And nobody knew that that child born wasn't his. Only the two of them knew. Not even the child knew. They never told the child. So the years went by and they developed this beautiful love. And when the son came, he was an extraordinary child. He was the apple of their eyes. He was smart, intelligent, capable, responsible. He was the dream child, according to our materialistic point of view. And when he was 20, there was an accident and he died. Now we can imagine her heart. She was devastated. He was devastated because even though the child wasn't related to him by blood ties, he loved that child as if it was his own. So, filled with anguish, his wife started to get little by little depressed. Until one day, a friend of his, who was a spiritist, said, "Why don't you take her to Uberaba, this little tiny town in Minas Gerais in Brazil, and go see Chico Xavier, the medium, Francisco Cândido Xavier." Because Chico Xavier had an interesting kind of work there. It wasn't about phenomena, it was about consolation. There were lines, people lined up, blocks of people waiting to see him. And he saw them all day long, drying tears, receiving letters from loved ones. And so the husband, not knowing what to do with the wife anymore, decided to go and take her to see Chico Xavier. She was waiting in line, many mothers, many people, different pains, every kind of disheartening situation. And Chico Xavier started approaching little by little, as he always did, walking by the people in line. And he looked at her, and he looked around, and he asked people that were online their permission, if they allowed her to go before all of them. Because she was a mother grieving a lot, and he needed to talk to her immediately. Now everybody, I mean, if it was, imagine the situation, nobody would say no to Chico Xavier, no? No, I go first, right? No. And they were all, he said, I will see all of you. Just please allow this mother to come with me. And so they did. Many minutes later, she comes out crying so much. And the husband was also very emotional, and they left. And so this friend of his, who asked him, "Did you go see Chico Xavier?" He said, "Yeah, I did." "Anything happened?" "Nope, nothing happened." He thought it was weird. Nothing happened. You go see Chico Xavier, even if you don't speak with him, from what we hear, his presence, his love was so great. He is another fatherly figure on earth, with all of the traits and characteristics of a man and a woman, the animals and the anima that are combined, the love that was Chico Xavier. So if you were before Chico Xavier, if nothing happened, you pretty much would pass out from so much emotion. Well, nothing happened. Well, the months went by, and one day this friend saw the father crying in the kitchen, and he said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "You know, I miss my son, but I also miss a really great friend of mine." And he said, "Who's this friend?" He said, "I never told you. As a matter of fact, nobody knows the story I'm about to tell you." So he starts narrating that in the 50s, his best friend was about to marry a woman who had become pregnant, but he died, and he filled in the shoes of husband and father. Nobody knew about this. And so 20 years later, the son died. And so Chico Xavier received a letter from the son. He said, "Dear father, dear mother, I am here before you. I am well, but I'm having a hard time moving on. Your pain and anguish visit me daily in waves of torments that hurts my soul. I know of your pain, I know of your anguish, but I am here to tell you that I am well. I have 3 fathers. I have my father above, who takes care of me. And then I learned that I have a beautiful father on earth who took care of me and took me in as his own. And upon arriving in the spirit world, I was told that in reality I had a 3rd one waiting for me." Nobody knew about this. Chico Xavier writes a letter of the son encountering the father in heaven, in the spirit realm, that came to receive him, while the father on earth was there grieving the loss of that child he took as his own. There is nothing more beautiful than the stories that we find of human beings embracing and reaching out to one another. There are countless stories that we can bring in talking about the love that extends from our Father to us. On earth. So the reason we get emotional at a day like this is because we feel the presence of our Father. I'm not just talking about our physical or biological or adoptive parents, I'm talking about our Father above, who sees us, who's connected to us, who embraces and encourages a mother's heart, a father's heart, when they're complaining or when they're stressed or when they're concerned about their children. And they're fearful that there's nothing that they can do, that they're powerless, but they're not. Because according to Emmanuel, all paternal Lord has given himself to us, but very few of us have given ourselves to him. That it is time, as we celebrate our fathers, those that have had a meaningful presence in our lives, it is time for us not only to be thankful for the life that they have given us, for the support that they have provided us with, for the lessons that they have given us, but also to connect with our Father above, in gratitude for this moment, in gratitude for the men and women who had had the courage to accept the mission of paternity and maternity. Because if it wasn't for them, none of us would be standing here today. And so it is with this heart filled with gratitude. Yes, for my father, my adopted one, my biological one, the father figures, my father-in-law who is responsible for my husband's presence in my life today, and all of the other fathers that we celebrate here. Mothers who have the presence of the father too. Godparents that are responsible for the life of the child. All of us present here, we can make a difference. So we extend the celebration of Father's Day into the Parental Love Day that we shall all celebrate and partake in. And invite you to invite others to feel what we feel here today. In remembering the connection with our God above, so that we never feel orphaned, so we never feel abandoned, and so that we always remember to value and celebrate and applaud the men and women who had had the courage to accept the noble invitation and mission of being a father and mother, even if they failed this time to do it. And never close the door, opening the door for communication and reconciliation, even if it's when our parents are old and frail and aging, having the courage, if they have already departed, sending them a loving message, envisioning a bouquet of flowers so that they receive the gratitude from our hearts, and remembering always to keep that gratitude alive. Always, because that is the way that we'll maintain our connectivity with God above. With that, we open for comments. With a final thought here, observe the birds in the sky. They neither sow nor reap, nor do they store anything in barns. But your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than they? Just to close that in thinking.